And Sony PlayStation 5 pricing and launch date is going to be announced. Very popular because the pre-orders have already sold out.
That's right, yeah. The Sony came out and announced the PlayStation 5, and you're right, this has been seen unprecedented pre-orders. I think the pre-orders sold out in 10 minutes. So if you haven't actually got in a pre-order, you're probably going to be waiting until 2021.
4 months ago, the PlayStation 5 was released upon the world. Sony had promised its next-gen console would generate new worlds for us to discover that would allow us to see what has never been seen, hear what has never been heard, and feel what has never been felt. Hardware that would rival a PC, such as a custom 8-core AMD Z2 CPU clocked at 3.5 GHz, and a custom GPU based on AMD's RDNA 2 architecture hardware that promises 10 teraflops and 36 compute units clocked at 2.3 GHz, with 16 gigs of GDDR6 RAM, ray tracing, and a custom SSD. With this kind of specs, it was promised it could pull off 4K at 60 frames, allowing console gamers to finally have their gaming experiences that would be ultra smooth and pixel perfect. And after 120 days, if by some miracle you managed to find one and managed to actually buy one, I would say it's actually not worth your time. What's up guys, welcome to That Freaking Geek, and today I'll be talking about my PS5 thoughts after months of some sweet gaming goodness. Now you're probably thinking, if I'm praising the console right now, why on earth am I saying that maybe you don't need it right now? Well, you see, the difference between the consoles are very small, and the difference that you kind of see, like, very few people see it. I unfortunately are able to actually see the difference. And so the difference, if you look back on the PS2 to the PS3 era, there was an actual jump that you saw, and arguably the jump from PS3 to PS4 might be bigger than the jump from PS4 to PS5. But that's technology right now. There's only so much that can happen between new devices. Yes, it's been around 7 years, 2013 when the PS4 came out, and so there are some changes. There are some key features that make the PS5 different. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about in my video right now. Those key features, what makes the PS5 special, but also maybe it actually doesn't even matter to you right now anyway. So what does 12,000 Rand get you? And yes, I am referring to the disc version of the console, not the digital version. Saving 2,000 Rand you might not end up saving 2,000 Rand, because a lot of your PS4 games can work on your PS5, but if they're all discs, they're not going to go into the digital version because it doesn't have a disc drive. And so because of the backwards compatibility and the fact that some PS4 games get a PS5 upgrade, I think it's well worth your money to rather get the PS5 version with a disc drive. So how do your PS4 games play on your PS5? Well, they range between no difference to a noticeable amount of difference. And so when a PS4 game actually has a bit of an upgrade, a PS5 upgrade, you can actually kind of see the difference. And there are some very kiff games right now running at a sweet 4K 60 frames. Those games include God of War, Crash Bandicoot 4, Days Gone, Ghost of Tsushima. Those games look incredible, but then you introduce something like ray tracing, which dynamically changes how it looks with its lighting and its mirror effects. But then you have to make some sacrifices. Take Spider-Man Remastered, for example. You can play that game with ray tracing, but you're going to have to play it in 30 frames and 4K. But if you want ray tracing and a smoother 60 frames, you're going to have to sacrifice on the resolution. Coming to third-party games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it runs at 60 frames, but at a higher, maybe a little higher than 1080p resolution. But if you want 4K, you're going to have to be stuck with 30 frames. Given how detailed and incredibly beautiful this game looks, you're gonna have to sacrifice on the smoothness. And so I don't think the beautiful world of 4K 60 is necessarily gonna happen, especially with big games like Valhalla in the coming future. And so while it may look really great on the PS5, I do think that it looks perfectly alright on the PS4. So all in all, the PS5 offers a great boost in performance to both your PS4 games and some KIF looking PS5 games. But the difference is so small that it's no reason for you to go out right now and buy the console. Except now we've talked about performance, but why are you buying this thing in the first place? You're buying it for the games. Well, honestly, a lot of the games you're going to be playing on your PS5 are going to be PS4 games. But still, there's some really KIF PS5 experiences I've had. Starting off with one of my personal favorites, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, Spider-Man Miles Morales might not have been the full experience like the Spider-Man before it, but it's still not an over-glorified DLC. This time, it features a thrilling story where you swing around a very snowy New York City. That gameplay that was upgraded from the last time. And it was so expertly well done with animations for Miles that suited it perfectly. And it is a must play on the PS5, but can be played on your PS4. And I've heard it runs really well. Then there was the Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And if you know me, you know I really love this franchise. Now, I will admit, when I started playing it, it was a bit of a slow burn. I wasn't enjoying my time as a Viking invading England, but I pushed through, and after persevering, I realized that this was one of the most gorgeous gaming worlds I've ever experienced, with combat that started a bit basic, that morphed into something deep and engaging that I absolutely loved. But once again, it is playable on the previous generation of consoles, albeit a bit poorly, but it's still playable. And the list goes on. Watch Dogs, Immortal, Sackboy, Hitman 3, the new Call of Duty, all of these games can be played on the previous gen consoles. And even some upcoming games, Horizon Forbidden West, Resident Evil Village, both games will be available on the PS4. Okay, but what about the games that are purely playable only on the PS5? Well, there is Demon Souls, which apparently is a masterpiece, but I'd like to keep my sanity, thank you very much. I'm not going to be playing that. Then there was the multiplayer game Destruction All-Stars. It was fun, but ultimately a very average experience. And upcoming games such as Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Deathloop, Returnal, all coming out in a few months. But that's still a little bit along the way in the year. Except my favorite PS5 only game would be Astro's Playroom. Now, I've talked about that game enough, so go check out my previous video, but let me just say, some of the best creative fun I've had in a video game in a long time. But okay, you've heard about that, but now what are some key features, or rather some notable quality of life differences in the PS5? The SSD has finally made it to the gaming consoles. Now, this is no ordinary SSD. This custom-made SSD is so good that it rivals some of the best PC SSDs out there right now. When you launch your PS5, you'll straight away notice that it launches way quicker, things download way faster, and moving around the new dashboard is incredibly snappy. And when a game takes advantage of an SSD, the load times range from quick to no loading at all. Most of the games you'll be playing on your PS5, you'll realize that you don't have as much time to reply to those messages, but it means that you have a lot more time to play those games that you want to play. Take the new Spider-Man game, for example. Miles Morales, literally from the home screen, when you launch it, into swinging around New York City in under 30 seconds. It is absolutely wild. The SSD is one of the best things about this console, and it is designed for gaming. And yes, well, ultimately it is a nice to have, and it isn't a must have. Okay, but what about the new controller? Okay, what is the most next-gen thing about this console? Well, that would be its DualSense controller. When a game takes advantage of this incredible controller, boy, are you in for a treat. It has this feature called haptic feedback. And now this isn't just your normal rumble in your controller. No, instead, it is an immersion of vibrations that dynamically change depending on what your terrain in the game is. Walk on ice, you feel it. Swim in water, you feel it. The rushing wind, you feel that too. Then you get the adaptive triggers. Now what that basically is that the back buttons, the back triggers, literally resist your fingers. And so when you're shooting an arrow, for example, you feel the tension of the string. Or when you're shooting a gun, you feel the tension of the trigger. You really have to try this yourself because it's really hard to explain here, but trust me, it is a sensation like no other. A lot of games right now do not take full advantage of this controller. But other than that, there's very little downside to this controller. So if you go out and buy a PS5 just for the controller, I won't blame you. So in the end, I don't think you're missing out on much on the PS5. Yes, games play way better on the PS5, but you'll only be bummed if you really can tell the difference. There are some KIF next-gen games, and that are games that are coming out soon, but there are very few of them. And yes, the SSD and the controller are revolutionary. They're absolutely incredible, but they're only really worth it when more games take advantage of it. If you go on this entire year without getting one, I don't think you'll experience a lot of FOMO. However, come Christmas, I think around that time will be a great time to go out and get a PS5. The future is bright for the PlayStation 5, albeit a little bit dim right now. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you on the next one.